Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to the United States Capitol. This is a red letter day for the American people, and I'm glad that you're all here and are taking part in this celebration. Since the era of Reconstruction, this chamber, which once was the hall of the House of Representatives, has become home to statues sent by the states. Today we gather to dedicate a national statue of the late Rosa Louise Parks in recognition of her many contributions to this nation and to the cause of freedom. It's the first statue of an African American woman to be placed in this Capitol. We are honored today to be joined by the President of the United States and members of his administration. Well, this is a homecoming of sorts for Ms. Parks, who for more than 20 years was an assistant to Representative John Conyers of Michigan. And I want to thank all the members of Congress that are here and all who worked to make this day possible. Also with us today are Eugene Daub, the sculptor, and Dr. Robert Furman, the co-designer of the statue. I think it's safe to say that this wasn't just any project, and these gentlemen certainly rose to the occasion. Gentlemen, please stand and be recognized. To unveil the statue, we will be joined by Sheila Keyes, a niece of Rosa Parks, and Elaine Steele, a longtime friend. Elaine Steele, a longtime friend of Ms. Parks and co-founder of the Rosa and Raymond Parks Institute for Self-Development. Thank you both for joining us, and thanks to all the civil rights guests who honor us today with your presence. Every now and then, we're going to stop back and say to ourselves, what a country. And this is one of those moments. Because, yes, all men and women are created equal, but as we'll hear during this ceremony, some grow to be larger than life and to be honored as such. Welcome.
Ring with the harmony of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening sky. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of a new day begun, let us march on till victory is won. God of our willingness, God of our silences, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy mind led us into the light, keep us forever in the path we pray. Bless our feet straight from the places, our God, where we met thee. Bless our hearts drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand. True to our God, true to our native.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Assistant Democratic Leader of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable James Clyburn.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, Speaker Boehner, Leader Pelosi, Leaders Reid and McConnell, friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. This is a good time and a great place to honor a most honorable woman. This year marks the 150th anniversary of the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, which jump-started a march to freedom for many who, while in servitude, built this great edifice. This year is also the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington, a watershed event in our quest for human dignity. Rosa Parks, the First Lady of Civil Rights, the mother of the movement, the saint of an endless struggle. However one wished to refer to her, this statue forever ordains Rosa Parks' status as an icon of our nation's struggles
to live out its declaration that we are all created equal. 1 hour ago, I sat across the street witnessing the opening arguments of a voting rights case before the United States Supreme Court, a case that many feel could turn the clock back on much of the progress that has been made and for which we pause today to honor Rosa Parks. The struggle goes on. The movement continues. The pursuit is not over. To honor Rosa Parks in the fullest manner, each of us must do our part to protect that which has been gained, defend the great documents upon which those gains were obtained, and will continue our pursuit of a more perfect union.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Democratic leader of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Nancy Pelosi.
Good morning, Mr. President, Leader Reid, Leader McConnell, Mr. Speaker, my colleague, Mr. Clyburn, members of Congress, House and Senate, distinguished guests. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for making this day possible. Thank you so much. One distinguished guest who's not with us, or maybe has come late, is John Lewis. We were on the steps of the Supreme Court earlier this morning. Mr. Clyburn stayed until the start of the program. Mr. John Lewis is holding forth over that. It is an honor to serve in the Congress of the United States. It's John Lewis. And it is a joy to be here to honor Rosa Parks. When Rosa Parks was a little baby, her mother sang her the hymn, "Oh Freedom, Let It Ring." She would hear that hymn in church, too, as she grew up. It became the anthem of her life and the mission of her life. As Rosa Parks would say years later, "I'd like to be remembered as a person who wanted to be free and wanted other people to be free, too." Rosa Parks is being remembered with his statue in the Capitol, but this is not the first time her greatness has been recognized here. She has many connections to Congress. She is no stranger to these halls. She was recognized with a Congressional Gold Medal inscribed with the title, "Mother of the Modern Day Civil Rights Movement," and with the words inscribed, "Quiet Strength, Pride, Dignity, and Courage." That was a great day when we honored her. She had personal connection to the House, as the Speaker mentioned. For 18 years, she was an assistant to John Conyers. And they worked together. They worked together to advance the cause of civil rights and equality. We always ask Mr. Conyers to tell us stories about Rosa Parks. And one that I think is appropriate at this time is John Conyers first met her when he was just out of school. He traveled south to join the civil rights movement after law school, and he met her then. She would come to Detroit. She worked in his first campaign, and she would later become his first congressional hire, the first person he hired on his congressional staff. What a beautiful connection. Well, pretty soon, Mr. Conyers found out that people were visiting the office to see Rosa Parks and not the congressman. In fact, she was invited all over the country to be honored. And how about this, Mr. President? One day she went to him and she said she wanted to thank him for allowing her to be honored all over the country and would be willing to take a pay cut for her time away from the office. Because of the leadership of the Congressional Black Caucus and that of Leader Reid and then Speaker Hastert, Rosa Parks was the first woman to lie in state in the rotunda of the Capitol of the United States. From her birth, her mother had sung "Letting Freedom Ring." How proud her mama would be to see her baby eulogized at her passing by two presidents, former President Bill Clinton and future President Barack Obama. Imagine that. I had the privilege of speaking at her funeral too, but what can you say in the company of that greatness? Well, what I said was that legislation had been introduced by Jesse Jackson Jr. and Senator John Kerry to place the capital of Rosa Parks in the capital of the United States. I got an uproarious reaction to it. What can you say among presidents, past and future, preachers from all over the country, a statue in Congress? I promised them that the legislation would pass, and quickly. Now that funeral was November 2nd, and on December 1st, President George W. Bush signed it into law. "50 years to the day that Rosa Parks sat down on the bus in Montgomery, Alabama. 50 years to the day." So Rosa Parks should feel right at home in the Capitol, joining Sojourner Truth, Dr. Martin Luther King, and many other American heroes. She will inspire all who walk these halls, especially young people, with her quiet strength, her pride, her dignity, her courage. I told you how Rosa Parks was recognized by Congress and friends of Congress. Now I'd like to share with you comments from one of my invited guests, the baseball great Willie Mays, my fellow Californian, born in Alabama, who saw the same injustices as Rosa Parks did as he was growing up. He couldn't be here today, but he sent a letter, and he said I could share these words about her. He said more than this, and I gave the complete letter to Sheila Keys, Rosa's niece. He said, "Most times, change doesn't happen fast. Most times, it happens bit by bit, little by little. One person's actions inspiring another. Rosa Parks simply did what was natural. She was tired, so she sat down. And that simple act sparked outrage. And that outrage spread, and one person's actions inspired change." He went on to say, "We will try to remember to encourage change when it serves justice. And today we will remember with admiration the simple act of a brave woman. We will remember, we will honor Rosa Parks." Lovely words from a fellow Alabaman, all-American icon, Willie Mays. By dedicating the statue, we honor Rosa Parks for her bravery, for serving justice, and for inspiring change. May this statue long be a tribute to her strength and spirit, her legacy, and her leadership. May God bless the memory of Rosa Parks.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Republican leader of the United States Senate, the Honorable Mitch McConnell.
Mr. President, you honor us with your presence. Thank you for being here. Speaker Boehner, Leader Reed, Leader Pelosi, Assistant Leader Clyburn, members of the Parks family, distinguished guests, and friends. We gather here today to remember a woman whose legacy has already outlived her time among us. And we honor her not only with our presence, but with this permanent reminder of the cause she embodied. With this statue, we affirm that the courage and the cause of Rosa Parks not only earned her a place in the hearts of all Americans, but a permanent place among the other figures in this hall of national memory. Rosa Parks may not have led us to victory against the British. She didn't give a single speech in the Senate or the House, or blast off into space, or point the way west in the western wilderness. Yet with quiet courage and unshakable resolve, she did something no less important on a cold Alabama evening in 1955. She helped unite the spirit of America, which the founders so perfectly and courageously expressed in the opening words of the Declaration of Independence, with the form of government they so brilliantly outlined in our Constitution. For some, Rosa Parks served as an inspiration to stand up against injustice. For others, she was a spur to reflection and self-examination, and the reconciliation of cherished ideals of freedom, democracy, and constitutional rights with the reality of life as others lived it. As President Bush put it upon signing the bill that authorized this statue, she set in motion a national movement for equality and freedom, which is, of course, why we're here today. Rosa Parks is often portrayed as a quiet, unassuming figure. She lives in America's collective memory in a pair of rimless glasses, hair pulled back, neatly dressed in a simple hat and dress, or staring stoically ahead in that famous photo as prisoner 7053. But we should not let that overshadow her tenacity. This was a woman who paid her own way through school by cleaning classrooms when she was just a child. A woman who was so determined to exercise her civic freedoms that she took the segregationist era literacy exam, a test that was designed to keep so many African Americans before her from registering to vote. Not once or twice, but 3 times until she passed it. So today, as Americans, we're united in reimagining Rosa Louise Parks clutching her purse in those tense moments as Montgomery City Bus number 2857 rolled down Cleveland Avenue. And we are reminded of the power of simple acts of courage. On an otherwise ordinary evening in Montgomery, she did the extraordinary by simply staying put. And in the process, she helped all of us discover something about ourselves and about the great regenerative capacity of America. We have had the humility as a nation to recognize past mistakes, and we've had the strength to confront those mistakes. But it has always required people like Rosa Parks to help us get there. Because of the changes she helped set in motion, entire generations of Americans have been able to grow up in a nation where segregated buses only exist in museums, where children of every race are free to fulfill their God-given potential, and where this simple carpenter's daughter from Tuskegee is honored as a national hero. What a story, what a legacy, what a country. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, the Honorable Harry Reid.
100 years after Rosa Parks was born, more than half a century after she sparked the civil rights movement, the United States is still striving to ensure every American is not only created equal by God, but treated equally in the world. As America shapes its future, it struggles with its past, a past in which equality was our principle, but not always our practice. Two of the best motion pictures this year were nominated for Academy Awards. Lincoln and Django Unchained offered cinematic treatments of the legacy of our nation's darkest institution, slavery. One film presents an unvarnished view of the evils of slavery. The other depicts our difficult journey to end slavery. It's significant that 150 years after President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, we're still considering in film, in photo, in art, in activism, how to eradicate slavery's unsavory successors, racism and inequality. In the doorway to my Capitol office, I have a photograph of the President in the Oval Office. Let me tell you why it's there. I got up, as I always do, and read the newspaper, and I saw this picture in the Washington Post. It appeared all over the country. We have these wonderful military officers who serve as an honor guard in the White House. They're dressed in these fancy uniforms, and they serve their tour of duty, and traditionally what happens is the President invites them into the Oval Office, the officer and his family. This officer was invited with his wife and 2 children. He is an African American, as are his children and his wife. The picture was not a posed picture. The photographer didn't have time to take the picture, I'm sure, the way he wanted. But this little boy, Jacob, said to the President in a real low voice, this innocent little boy, said to the President of the United States, the President couldn't hear him, he said, "What'd you say, buddy?" The little boy said, "Can I feel your hair?" I'm sure this little boy had been teased at school because of his hair. So the President leaned over, and that's the picture. And this angelic child is feeling his hair. And when he finished feeling the hair, he looked up at the President of the United States and said, "It's just like mine." I show that picture to everyone coming to my office when I'm in the entryway. And even today, after months and months, this signed picture the President gave to me caused me to shed a tear. To me and to us, I'm sure it's a potent reminder that although our journey is not over, this country has come far in its short history toward righting injustice and living up to its founding principles. But without the determination and sacrifice of Rosa Parks, this presidency, this photograph, so much of the progress we've made to perfect our union would not have been possible. So today, a nation pays enduring tribute to the woman who moved the world when she refused to move her seat.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable John Boehner.
Let me again thank all of you for joining us in this wonderful ceremony today. In many ways, this statue speaks for itself, which is a blessing because no words can do justice to Rosa Parks. Here in the Old Hall, she cast an unlikely silhouette, unassuming in a lineup of proud stares, challenging all of us once more to look up and to draw strength from stillness. As a child, Rosa Parks was shy, reserved, at least on the outside. On the inside, she was absolutely absorbing the gospel listening closely to God, who, as she said, was everything to me. Through every ordeal, she'd repeat some scripture to herself. From Corinthians, we were all made to drink from one spirit. From Luke, the parable of the persistent widow who prays and prays for an unjust judge until finally he sees the light. So it's no surprise that when warned that she would be arrested, Rosa Parks didn't have to look very far for courage. She really didn't have to look anywhere. I felt quite determined. I felt determination, I should say, come over my body, like a quilt on a winter night. You see, humility isn't compatible with bravery. And we put God before ourselves when we make in God we trust, not just a motto, but a mission, as Rosa Parks did, any burden can be lifted. This statue speaks for itself, and today we speak for a nation committed to remembering and, more importantly, emulating Rosa Parks. So we place her here in a chamber where many fought to prevent a day like this, and right in the gaze of Jefferson Davis, the President of the Confederacy. It brings to mind Lady Liberty herself, rising amid the titans of finance and presiding over New York Harbor, the promise of America clear for all to see. For when these trappings of ceremony come down and people from all walks of lives and backgrounds and beliefs will pass through here, pass by one another, some on their way to cast a vote, some just on a tour. It'll be an ordinary route, but one that about half a century ago would have been clearly improbable. I can think of no more perfect way to capture the vision of a more perfect union than to which Miss Parks has already started. It is my honor to accept into the Capitol Art Collection this statue of Rosa Louise Parks, a Lady Liberty for our times and all time. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, Leader Reid, Leader McConnell, Leader Pelosi, Assistant Leader Clyburn, to the friends and family of Rosa Parks, to the distinguished guests who are gathered here today. This morning, we celebrate a seamstress, slight in stature, but mighty in courage. She defied the odds, and she defied injustice. She lived a life of activism, but also a life of dignity and grace. And in a single moment, with the simplest of gestures, she helped change America and change the world. Rosa Parks held no elected office. She possessed no fortune, lived her life far from the formal seats of power. And yet today she takes her rightful place among those who've shaped this nation's course. I thank all those persons, in particular the members of the Congressional Black Caucus, both past and present, for making this moment possible. A childhood friend once said about Ms. Parks, "Nobody ever bossed Rosa around and got away with it." That's what an Alabama driver learned on December 1st, 1955. 12 years earlier, he had kicked Mrs. Parks off his bus simply because she entered through the front door when the back door was too crowded. He grabbed her sleeve and he pushed her off the bus. It made her mad enough, she would recall, that she avoided riding his bus for a while. And when they met again that winter evening in 1955, Rosa Parks would not be pushed. When the driver got up from his seat to insist that she give up hers, she would not be pushed. When he threatened to have her arrested, she simply replied, "You may do that." And he did. A few days later, Rosa Parks challenged her arrest. A little-known pastor, new to town and only 26 years old, stood with her, a man named Martin Luther King Jr. So did thousands of Montgomery, Alabama commuters. They began a boycott. Teachers, laborers, clergy, and domestics, through rain and cold and sweltering heat, day after day, week after week, month after month, walking miles if they had to, arranging carpools where they could, not thinking about the blisters on their feet, the weariness after a full day of work, walking for respect, walking for freedom, driven by a solemn determination to affirm their God-given dignity. 385 days after Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, the boycott ended. Black men and women and children reboarded the buses of Montgomery, newly desegregated, and sat in whatever seat happened to be open. And with that victory, the entire edifice of segregation, like the ancient walls of Jericho, began to slowly come tumbling down. It's been often remarked that Rosa Parks' activism didn't begin on that bus. Long before she made headlines, she had stood up for freedom, stood up for equality, fighting for voting rights, rallying against discrimination in the criminal justice system, serving in the local chapter of the NAACP. Her quiet leadership would continue long after she became an icon of the civil rights movement, working with Congressman Conyers to find homes for the homeless, preparing disadvantaged youth for a path to success, striving each day to right some wrong somewhere in this world. And yet, our minds fasten on that single moment on the bus. Ms. Parks, alone in that seat, clutching her purse, staring out a window, waiting to be arrested. That moment tells us something about how change happens or doesn't happen. The choices we make or don't make. For now we see through a glass darkly, Scripture says. And it's true. Whether out of inertia or selfishness, whether out of fear or a simple lack of moral imagination, we so often spend our lives as if in a fog, accepting injustice, rationalizing inequity, tolerating the intolerable. Like the bus driver, but also like the passengers on the bus. We see the way things are. Children hungry in a land of plenty. Entire neighborhoods ravaged by violence. Families hobbled by job loss or illness. And we make excuses for inaction. And we say to ourselves, that's not my responsibility. There's nothing I can do. Rosa Parks tells us there's always something we can do. She tells us that we all have responsibilities to ourselves and to one another. She reminds us that this is how change happens. Not mainly through the exploits of the famous and the powerful, but through the countless acts of often anonymous courage and kindness and fellow feeling and responsibility that continually, stubbornly expand our conception of justice, our conception of what is possible. Rosa Parks' singular act of disobedience launched a movement. The tired feet of those who walked the dusty roads of Montgomery helped a nation see that to which it had once been blind. It is because of these men and women that I stand here today. It is because of them that our children grow up in a land more free and more fair, a land truer to its founding creed. And that is why this statue belongs in this hall. To remind us, no matter how humble or lofty our positions, just what it is that leadership requires. Just what it is that citizenship requires. Rosa Parks would have turned 100 years old this month. We do well by placing a statue of her here. But we can do no greater honor to her memory than to carry forward the power of her principle and a courage born of conviction. May God bless the memory of Rosa Parks. And may God bless these United States of America.
Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Army Chorus.